And here we have a standard 10-seat table. Um, Hopefully everyone knows the three basic positions: the dealer, the small blind, and the big blind. And then we're going to continue on with these rest of these players. It's really not so important to know exactly the name of the position, besides like these five right here. As long as you know your relative position to the other players in the hand, that's really what's most important. And as you can see, it's the seats are coded red, yellow, green, being positions you don't want to play from to positions you do want to play from. They're definitely being more profitable the further you get this way. That's just a function of poker. Position is power. So after the small blind and the big blind, we have under the gun, ETG, EP1, EP2, MP1, and MP2, which stand for early position and middle position respectively. Not so important again. But once we get into the green, it does become more important, because this is where we want to play most of our hands from. We have the hijack, the cutoff, and the button, or the dealer. And the hijack is 2 before, the cutoff's 1 before, and the dealer is the button, the position of power. One more thing. You'll hear me talk in terms of big blinds, BBs, big bets, blinds, whatever. That's kind of your measuring stick, if you will. So just assume we're always playing 1-2. So if I say you have 100 BBs, which is generally the starting stack, that's $200, right? 100 times 2, which is the big blind, is 200. It's generally what we want to be buying in with at any 1-2 game. So if I were to say, he shoved for 50 big blinds, that would mean he went all in for $100. Just so you know, in case you weren't aware, that's just kind of how we measure stuff. Continuing on, talking about in and out of position here with IP or OOP. Hopefully we want to be doing a lot less of this and a lot more of this. Position is power. Always remember that. These three are just technical terms. You probably already have a good idea what they mean. Limping is just open calling. So if you're under the gun, you're first to act, playing 1-2, and you just call the big blind, you call $2, that's a limp. Further on we'll talk about our pre-flop strategy, but just know that limping is not a part of it. It is very weak. It's how you bleed money. It's not an effective strategy. Not in a winning poker way anyway. Next we have open, which is just short for open raising. In the same scenario, it's to you, you're under the gun, 1-2, and you make it $10. That's an open raise. As opposed to a normal raise where there's a limper in front of you. So under the gun calls $2, you're next to act, and you raise at 12. You raised over them. It wasn't an open raise. And finally we have a flat, which is just calling a raise. So limp and flat are different. In that flatting, you're calling someone who's raised. Limp, you're just calling the blind. These terms down here, these three bet, squeeze, and 4-bet, you may not be as familiar with, but they are important because they do come up relatively often, and it's good to know your strategy for these different types of scenarios. 3-bet is really just a re-raise. It comes from limit hold'em, where a raise is 2 bets, and a re-raise would then be a 3-bet. It would follow that a 4-bet then would be a re-raise, or a raise of a 3-bet. And we'll distinguish between a normal 4-bet and a cold 4-bet. And a squeeze is just a type of 3-bet in which there's a caller in between the raiser and the re-raiser. I have these scenarios right here, just in a little hand history book, so you can see them for more clarification. Alright, so here's a squeeze. Seat 5 here, which is what? Under the gun, EP1, EP2. Not that important, just clarifying. Raises to $10 with 9s. It's going to fold around to the cutoff, which is seat 9. He's going to call, and then the button makes a 3-bet to $37. We have the open, a flat, and then a 3-bet, but in this case it's technically a squeeze because there is a caller in between the raiser and the re-raiser, meaning this man has been squeezed. And it's a really effective strategy because it makes it very difficult for both of them to call. Him because he is no longer closing the action, and this raiser has shown strength by raising over 2 players, and him because he's in between 2 people who've shown strength, where he's just shown a bit of weakness by just flatting. So it's a very effective strategy. Not something you want to go crazy with. It's just worth it to know the difference between a regular 3-bet and a squeeze. Okay, here we have a normal 4-bet. The cutoff's going to open here. Yes, the cutoff opens to $9. It folds around to the big blind. So here the big blind thinks, the cutoff's making a steal. He's going to make a re-raise or a 3-bet with a suited connector type of hand, something that plays well post-flop. And then it comes back to the cutoff here, and he says not so fast, and makes a 4-bet. So it went raise, 3-bet, 4-bet. This is just a normal 4-bet, and I'll show you the difference between a cold 4-bet next. So here we're going to have an example of a cold 4-bet, which is different than a normal 4-bet. And it's going to start off with C5 here, opening suited connectors in an early position, trying to start something. So he opens the $10. It's going to fold around to the cutoff, who's going to put in a 3-bet, which he does. Notice the sizing. It's not massive. He's in position. He doesn't have to make it huge. So there's the 3-bet from the cutoff. And now the big blind here makes the 4-bet. So this is different from our last scenario in which there was a raise, re-raise, and then the 4-bet came in from the same player who had started it. This time there's a raise, a 3-bet, and then a 4-bet from a different player. Alright, this is just monumentally strong. It shows so much more strength than a normal 4-bet. It is just almost always kings or aces. If a new player comes into the pot for a raise over a 3-bet, making it a cold 4-bet, it is almost always aces or kings. So just be wary of that. It's almost never, ever a bluff. So now, as you see, we're going to talk a bit about player types and just kind of break down the guys you see in the casino, night in, night out, and how they play. I won't say what their strategy is, but you can define how they play based on 2 key factors. That is, how many hands they play, tight or loose, and how they play those hands post flop. Their betting patterns. Are they betting a lot, or are they calling a lot? Or passive means they can just be folding a lot too. So first we're going to talk about this guy who's going to make up most of the players you see at a casino, the loose passive station. Okay, doesn't matter what's in front of him, he's going to call and see a flop, and if he comes with even, if he comes within 3 cards of one of his, he's probably going to call anyway. He just wants to make his cards look like the ones on the board, and he's gonna pay to do so. And you know what? A lot of times, everyone's had that night where he's just hitting cards better than you are, and it can be really frustrating because you're never gonna bluff him off anything, and he's gonna call you down, 2 or 3 streets, the second or third pair, and you're not gonna believe it when he flips that over on the river. But he's gonna do it to you every time. So we need to have an effective strategy against this guy, and it's a pretty simple one when you think about it, but a lot of times emotions get in the way. Next we have the nit down here, the tight passive player.